Hello and welcome to this edition of Joy in Our Town. I'm Ann Farrell Tata, your host, and today I'd like to welcome my guests, Kay Ashby and Courtney Boone, with an organization called NAMI, and Karen Jackson, who's with the Faith Inclusion Network. And our issue today is family, and our topic is building mental health awareness. So thank you, ladies, for being with us today, and welcome. Kay, I'm going to start with you. Can you talk a little bit about sort of the definition of mental health and what we mean? What that means.
So everybody has mental health. I take care of my mental health by exercise and by diet. My daughter takes care of hers by using some medicine as well because she has bipolar disorder. But when you think of physical health, you know how to define it. So think about mental health in the same way. It's the most important part of your body, your brain. And if it starts to deteriorate, you go to the doctor. Maybe you have bipolar disorder, maybe you have depression. As Courtney will explain, that's really not the best way to think about our mental health as it deteriorates.
Yeah, because oftentimes, and one of the problems with mental health is the stigma associated with it. And one of the opportunities we have as a community is in breaking down that barrier and removing that stigma by thinking of our mental health just like we do about the rest of the health of our body. And that means looking not at the diagnosis, not at that label, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, depression, but instead when we're going to our provider to get the help we need, whether that's medication or other services, talking about the symptoms that we're suffering from, because then I think in the community conversation, that's a lot easier to understand and then to be able to help with and work with.
Because when they talk about, like if you have cardiac disease, there could be high blood pressure, there could be, AFib, there are different things, but with mental health, are you saying that you don't like to talk about as much as the label, a schizophrenic or bipolar or depression, but you more just you want to talk generally about the symptoms? That's a new way of thinking about mental health.
Indeed,
right?
And that's one of the things, because of those labels, I believe that that's one of the reasons we don't have more of a rich conversation around what we can all do together to make things better for someone living with a mental illness. And if we talked about those particular symptoms just like it would be if you have cardiac issues, if you have cancers, and addressing those symptoms, everyone I think would be able to be in a lot different place than we are now.
Well, let's take PTSD for instance. Is that, you would more want to talk about that as symptoms instead of addressing?
Because many of the symptoms of PTSD are common to other mental health issues.
Okay.
And I think the question then is, if you can avoid that label, whatever the label happens to be, then you go to the doctor. Right now, about 50% of people that have a mental health issue are not getting help. They're not going for help.
And is it because they're afraid of the stigma, or they don't realize that their symptoms they're having is actually something?
I think part of it is the stigma. Some of it is thinking that they don't have a problem. My daughter heard voices for 1.5 years, but didn't tell anybody because she didn't want them to think she was crazy.
Oh yeah.
So
there's fear.
Well, there's fear, but there's that stigma, because the stigma of being called crazy.
Right.
So what if something happens, something's unusual, they just can say it, something's not right, I'm not feeling right, or I'm noticing that something else is happening. I go to the doctor.
So, and at NAMI, can you talk a little bit about what that is and how you help address some of these issues?
Absolutely. So NAMI stands for the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and we're a grassroots organization made up primarily of volunteers that offer the community free, and I'd like to highlight that, free education classes, support groups. We do outreach and education around mental health, mental wellness, and celebrating mental wellness, and try to reframe the conversation to get individuals living with a mental illness the help they need
Right.
the people that love them get the support they need, and our community as a whole being much healthier, because that education and that knowledge is going to keep growing the opportunities for communication and for advancement.
Well, and even just talking about, names, going from mental illness to mental wellness, is that a local initiative, or is that something that's going on across the country that you're trying to change the perception and the name?
May is Mental Health Awareness Month.
Okay.
And in that, I believe it was in 2015, that there was this marvelous young woman who came up with this phrase, and she said, "Why do we keep talking about mental health? Why aren't we celebrating our mental wealth?" So we all were like, everyone wants mental wealth. Who doesn't want mental wealth? And then the whole piece, mental wellness, mental wealth, it's a reframing of the words.
Right.
It's changing things up to make it positive, not a negative. Oh, you suffer from mental health.
And mental health is a national campaign. But
Yes.
here locally, we've created a mental health coalition so that dispersed groups aren't working independently, that we come together to work on the issue, to bring it to the public attention.
That's
And
actually,
that's,
I was wondering about that. Is your organization sort of a clearinghouse of helping people? Are you in contact with a lot of different agencies and organizations, and you're a good place to start?
We are, and we have a helpline that's available for people to get information. We have a website that you've already posted with all of our classes that we offer and all the programs that we offer. And then we work with people like Karen here, who had reached out to NAMI from the Faith Inclusion Network to see if we couldn't do something together to reach out to the faith communities.
And Karen, that's a good point. You actually have a personal interest in this because of your own family. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Right, sure. Well, I'm a parent of a child who has a disability. My daughter, Samantha, has autism, and a more severe type of autism where, the caregiving is very involved. So I've helped start a support group at my church for parents of children who have disabilities. And I think it's really, really important for the mental health of caregivers to find that support, whether it be, with friends, faith community, family, because they're really at risk. People who are caregivers, who are on the front lines in caring for children who have disabilities, often don't receive services until, we didn't receive state waiver services until she was 13. So you're on the front lines all the time, really, needing support from all sorts of ways. So, the way I got supported, I started a support group.
Yeah.
So I said, I need help, and through that support group, I found that there were a lot of people who have children with disabilities or people with disabilities that are not as supported and included in faith communities as they could, and that's sort of where Faith Inclusion Network grew. It grew into Faith Inclusion Network.
So when you first started, how old was your daughter when you realized that she had this, and was it the symptoms that clued you in?
Well, really, she's not that verbal, so she really just doesn't develop any language about 2 years old.
Oh, yeah. So you knew
so we
something
knew
was wrong.
There was something not, happening. We didn't know what it
Right.
was, and so did a lot of testing when she was 2 years old, and eventually came up with a diagnosis of autism.
And what did you do? I mean, this is a perfect
Yeah.
example of the kind of people you're trying to reach, right?
Yeah.
Like, what did you do, and where did you go to try to find resources, and who helped you navigate that?
Well, a lot of parents I knew who have that diagnosis for their child, usually they go to the internet first. They're looking for information. I just want to know, what is this? I had never experienced this. I didn't ever grow up in a family that had anyone with disability. And so you just start from there, looking for in books and what can I learn. I think over time I realized that I really needed way more support
Right.
than there was available, and started to reach out to different people. And it's just more recently I've realized that how important my mental health is in taking
Right.
care of myself. And that's why I care so much about working with NAMI, because I know a lot of caregivers who are in a very difficult place, and they need that support whether it be counseling or support groups, or people recognizing that, hey, you need some help, know. So
What are some of the things that NAMI does for the caregivers?
Well, I teach a class called Family to Family.
Family to family?
And that educates the parent or loved one about what the illnesses are, how to communicate, how to access services, and how to advocate. Because one of the big things, someone with autism might eventually get a waiver. But if you have a child who has a mental illness, there are no waivers.
When you say waivers,
And I say a waiver,
what
that
do you
means that
mean?
you're getting assistance from the government to cover the costs of caregiving.
or respite, or
So your organization also does like policy things, or at least can help direct them.
We
with-
do advocate. We advocate for mental health initiatives. We advocate for funding. We advocate for more services, because what we've found out is the earlier the intervention, the earlier the success, the better the success.
And when you say intervention, you mean families getting involved?
Family getting
like
involved,
a
family,
multi-level.
the person being identified with an illness, getting the services that they need, means that by the time they're 18 and 25, they're not getting sick for the first time, like
Right.
my daughter did.
Right.
She probably got sick when she was in 7th grade. She wasn't diagnosed till she was 25.
So you do a lot of things about looking for symptoms. Is that
we
something that-
don't so much.
Yeah, we're not clinicians,
Oh,
but
yeah.
what we are is a group, because once you get sick or have someone who gets sick, there's no handbook.
Right.
And it is so very difficult just within the behavioral health community to navigate what's available, what isn't available, where do I go? And it can become in such a critical time in your loved one's life or in your life, to keep coming up against barrier after barrier. We help, hopefully, in trying to break those down, so you do know where some of those services that you might need, because your son, who is 19 years old, just dropped out of college because he just had his first psychotic break. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and he left the hospital with a folder.
Oh, wow.
And that's it. So that's all you have.
Right.
That schizophrenia is not going to just be for the next year or two. That is going to be a lifelong part of his journey,
Right.
and yours as his parent. And our role is to help support that and give whatever we can, so the care for that individual is the optimal, and not giving the care, but helping just to direct to, and knowing that they're not alone.
Are you in doctor's offices or, emergency rooms with your information? Like, how do people find out about?
Depends. And that's that's because we're an all-volunteer organization. Getting
The word
NAMI and the services that we offer at no charge out there is a challenge, and you definitely, in the psychiatric community, there are some that are very open to sharing with their patients
Yeah.
the information. Unfortunately, that is a very small percentage,
Yeah.
and we're really working hard to change that.
Well, Courtney, Karen, and Kay, that's actually a perfect way to transition over to some of the social media and events that you guys are doing to help get the word out. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to continue this, and you can tell us about some of the events that you guys are working with. I'm Ann Farrell Tata. Thank you so much for joining us on Join Our Town, and we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Hi, welcome back to Join Our Town. I'm Ann Farrell Tata, your host, and we are joined with Kay Ashby and Courtney Boone with NAMI, an organization, and Karen Jackson with the Faith Inclusion Network. And our issue is family, and we are this segment, we're going to be talking about removing the stigma surrounding mental health. And that's welcome back first. Thank you for staying with me. And Karen, I do want to talk to you, because this is something you're really passionate about continuing the conversation, broadening the conversation to make sure people have an understanding, and there is no shame and no stigma. And so you are, there's sort of an annual event because of May being a Mental Health Awareness Month. Can you talk about some of the events you're working on?
Yes, we're doing an event called Hiding in Plain Sight, and it's a community conversation we're bringing together clergy from around the area in a panel discussion with the audience members being able to participate by asking questions and really finding ways that the faith communities can bring awareness about mental health, mental illness, and find solutions on how individuals can be supported and family members can be supported.
And so is it going to be like a, a panel discussion, or is there
Yes,
a
well-
gala, or what,
Well,
what are you
when
envisioning?
we do events, we always have food. Okay,
Oh, okay, yeah.
so
It's a good place.
It's actually a
Good draw.
free event as well. So it's about 10 to 2, a couple hours of having this community conversation, discussion with everyone, followed by a networking luncheon.
Yeah.
So people can continue their conversations that they had started and meet other people who care about this issue in our community.
And what are some of the things that you want people to know? If you were, talking to everybody, what do you want people to know?
Well, I think one of the most important things to me is that, one, it affects so many people that we need to be okay with talking about mental illness, just like we talk about any other kind of disability, and not be scared to bring it up. I think that in our faith communities is a perfect opportunity to support people here. Like Kay was saying earlier, there's not a lot of assistance for families. So what's a family going to do who's really being challenged by mental illness, by a family member trying to caregive and so forth? Where are they going to get support? Well, hopefully if they're involved with their faith community, that faith community can come around and alongside them and support them. So I think that's a really important message that we're trying to together bring to the community.
Are you
can bring
finding
this.
they're receptive to this?
It's very
Yes.
interesting. We have different faith communities, different places. Some are really out there talking about it, and others haven't gotten to that point. And that's our hope, is that as we speak more about it, the panel will give suggestions about what they're doing. A faith community can be an education source. It's okay to talk about your family's problem. It can be a support place. It also can be a place that creates new groups, new ways of handling a situation.
Well, and you talked a little bit about this before, but can you talk a little more about how important it is for early detection and treatment? Because that's just part of it.
Karen briefly touched on it. 1 in 4 families, 1 in 4 individuals are touched by mental illness in their lifetime. 1 in 5 families are touched by mental illness. And so by expanding, what's happening, identifying that problem early on means that you have to know what to look for. So we want to educate the community about, these are the signs of mental illness. If you see this happening, we're concerned about suicide. So what are the signs that, that somebody might look for with suicide prevention? But identify it and then get the support you need. And that support really needs to be wraparound. So we want the schools involved, we want the churches involved to help that person move through their life and help that family have the support to be able to be caregivers.
Yeah, go ahead.
And just like any other, any other illness and the support, it is all inclusive. It is, you are, if you get diagnosed with cancer, you have a posse around you of love and support and caring. We want that, and it's seen, and it is exerted. We want that to be the ability to have the exact same reaction if someone falls ill with a mental illness as well. And then we'll know we've done an amazing job, because it is an illness in the body just like any other illness in the body, and we shouldn't be afraid of it. And I love the title of Hiding in Plain Sight, because mental illness often is hiding because you cannot see it. You cannot see someone hearing voices.
Right.
But what you do see is their reaction to hearing voices, and that can often be disconcerting, frightening even.
Sure.
And that's what we want to be able to help and address that individual and get them on the road to recovery.
Well, and that I think it's so important because I remember, one of my children, she needed glasses, but she was, in first grade. She didn't know that everyone wasn't seeing the same way until she, somebody got glasses and then she tried them on. She said, now I can see. So by bringing this out, people may not even realize, they hear voices in their head, but maybe they don't realize not everyone does.
Exactly.
So it is so important to,
Like if your daughter had been in 8th grade
yeah.
and had to wear those glasses, would she have wanted to?
Yeah, right.
So-
well, she didn't when she got to 8th grade, even though she'd been wearing it for a while.
And so that's, that's another aspect of it.
Right.
If this illness is hitting in teenagers
Yeah.
and even younger, they don't want to be sick. They want to be just
Right.
like their friends. So we have to make this an okay,
Right.
just like anything else is okay. You don't want to have cancer. You don't want
Yeah.
to. But if you have it, you know what? We're going to treat it. We're going to move on with it. And the other event that we're working on is this beacon of hope, and that's the same idea. We want you to have hope,
Right.
and we want the individuals to understand that it's better to be treated, because if you're not treated, for some adults, some individuals, they will commit suicide
Right.
because the illness will grow.
When they want it to stop, whatever is
Yes,
eating away,
that's
then they
right.
just probably want to silence it, not realizing that they can get help.
That's right.
So, all right, let's talk about let's say Karen, had heard about NAMI and she just found out about her child and she comes, what does she do? She would make a phone call, does she make an appointment and come down and you do an assessment, or how does it work?
Well, no, because we don't do anything clinically
Right,
with
okay.
NAMI. And I'll give you an example that just happened yesterday. I had a call from a mother whose daughter had just been released from a psychiatric hospital the day before.
And how did she find out about you? Because that's key too.
This is where we get discouraged, but yet
Oh.
motivated. She heard about it from a family friend in Ohio, not
Oh,
for
wow.
someone here in the Commonwealth.
Okay.
Well,
Well, we're going to do our job to get this out there.
Not when her daughter was in.
Yeah.
So that she heard about it.
Yeah.
So we were applauding, and what she was calling is trying to find out what resources were available for her to access for her daughter.
Right.
And in that was as simple as the only thing she had was an appointment with a psychiatrist the
Right.
following week. But she knew there were going to be a lot of different things that she was going to have to deal with.
Right.
She had now the care of her 3-year-old granddaughter. She had, and all of this happened. Her daughter had never been sick before, and it was a first hospitalization.
Wow.
So had no background anywhere within
Right.
mental health or behavioral health. What we were able to provide were different community services in Virginia Beach, specific names of people and phone numbers of these professionals that will link her to what she was going to need. And as of today, those linkages have happened, and who she was yesterday to who she is today is a lot stronger due to just the direction that we were able and the support we were able to give
Yeah.
in a 30-minute phone call.
I mean, that is the hope that you guys are
It's
talking
like
about.
that is a
So-
game changer.
Yeah.
So she'll go to a support group that we offer, and she'll hear other families that will give her the faith that she's going to get through
Yeah.
this, that it's
She's
not
not
the end of the
alone.
world, that she's not alone.
Right.
They'll have so many ideas for her of things she can do and where
Yeah.
she can go.
Now, in some of these groups, do you categorize it by the symptoms, or
No.
is it just if
No.
you are
No.
struggling with
Yes.
and under the
Yeah,
umbrella?
Yes. And as Courtney mentioned earlier, we don't charge
Yeah.
and we don't ask. We don't say, well, are you sure you need to be here?
Yeah. Right.
If somebody comes, they're welcome to the group, and then and the same thing is for somebody living with mental illness. They can come to our groups. One of our groups is targeted for people coming out of the military, and some of them do have PTSD,
Right.
but it's not limited to that. And so you might need a daytime group, but you like a small one.
Yeah.
You might need an evening group. We just started an evening group.
So what about addictions and associated with mental illness? Do you address that, or is that you refer them?
It is a very common, obviously, having co-occurring substance abuse and mental health issues. Our focus is on mental illness. We help many who as well have substance abuse issues that they have to struggle with.
Right.
But our focus is on the mental health piece.
And wait, did you say you do have counselors there? I mean,
No.
oh, you
no,
don't.
we don't
you have
counselors.
referral. You
so
refer.
we have all of our facilitators of any of the groups or classes are trained by NAMI in Virginia.
Oh, okay.
So they're trained, but they're not counselors.
Oh, yeah.
But in our Connection, which is our consumer support group for individuals living with mental illness, many of them can say, well, you know, I've been there. I have depression and I treated it with alcohol for years.
Right.
You know, this helped me.
Right.
I went to AA and came here.
Right.
So that personal lived knowledge
Yeah.
is shared, and that's if you want to use the word counseling, that's what we do. But we're not counselors. But we can
Right.
say, you know, this guy worked best for me. Maybe that's someone you need, or this
Well,
woman.
you know, oh, were you going to say something?
Every facilitator who teaches the family class,
Right.
every single facilitator is a parent or loved one of someone living with mental illness.
Oh, yeah.
The peer-to-peer, which is someone who's living with mental illness, every single facilitator has and lives with mental illness themselves. So there is not that setup where it is someone who might have professional knowledge but not real life experience.
But that's a great qualification
Huge.
that they can really identify. I mean, you probably would prefer, Karen, to talk to somebody who's another mom, you know, that is walking in your shoes.
I think, yeah, if someone's walked in those shoes and has experienced it, then it's really important to connect with those people. I think it's all
Right.
about connecting, you
Right.
know, and
Well, and I'm, you know, a recipient of this because I've learned so much today about that I didn't even realize, and I'm so glad to know about this. And we are going to put your website up, and you would say probably you want to just encourage people to go and get help and not be afraid or ashamed.
oh, absolutely.
I'm sure.
There
Yeah.
is no shame. in
Yeah,
this.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to thank you guys so much for being here today, and as I said, I hope people will reach out to you and get the help that they need. But thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Ann Farrell Tata. This is Joy in Our Town, and we will see you next time. Thank you.
This program has been sponsored by the Trinity Broadcasting Network and made possible by your telethon dollars. Your continual support can keep Joy in Our Town brought to your home every day. So write Joy in Our Town, P.O. Box A, Santa Ana, California, 92711.